when the new girl Alara stepped into the cafeteria of Ridgewood High for the first time. She carried her lunch tray with both hands as though she were balancing her entire world upon it, her eyes wide and cautious, scanning the crowded room filled with students who already had their groups, their laughter, their routines, while she remained an outsider in a sea of familiarity. And though she tried to appear invisible, her quiet steps echoing louder in her own ears than anyone else's, she could feel the gazes, those sharp, dissecting glances that darted her way before turning into whispers and smirks. And it wasn't long before the attention of the cafeteria's most feared group of seniors, led by Jason, a tall, broad-shouldered boy with a smirk that seemed permanently glued to his face, shifted to her. The new girl, who dared to walk through their kingdom without permission, and as Alara made her way toward an empty table near the corner, Jason leaned back in his chair, tapping his fingers against his soda can, while his crew, 3 boys and 2 girls equally arrogant, turned their heads like wolves scenting prey, their eyes gleaming with the thrill of the coming spectacle. And though Alara's heart raced, her mind screaming for her to sit quickly, eat quietly, and escape without being noticed, her body betrayed her as she moved slowly, stiffly, placing her tray on the cold table surface with trembling fingers, trying to steady herself, only to hear Jason's voice echo across the cafeteria, loud enough to silence nearby chatter. "Hey, new girl, nice to see you finally joined us, peasants. Hope you brought something worth sharing." And laughter erupted from his circle, bouncing off the walls, forcing heat to rise to Alara's cheeks as dozens of heads turned toward her, her every move now under the spotlight, and she told herself to stay calm, to ignore them, to prove she wasn't worth their time. Yet before she could even open her water bottle, a crumpled napkin landed beside her tray, then a piece of bread, then a half-empty ketchup packet squeezed from across the room, splattering near her apple. And the humiliation hit her like a wave, but she clenched her jaw, whispering in her mind, "Don't react, don't give them what they want." Except Jason wasn't done. He never stopped when he saw weakness. And rising with theatrical arrogance, he sauntered across the cafeteria, each step followed by the echoing taunts of his gang, until he stood towering over Alara, his shadow darkening her food, his grin wide as he asked mockingly, "So, new girl, tell us, do you eat alone because no one can stand you? Or because you think you're too good for us?" And before Alara could respond, his hand snatched a chicken nugget from her tray and tossed it in the air, catching it with his mouth to the applause of his friends. And then, as though on cue, one of the girls, Kendra, tall with sharp eyeliner and sharper words, grabbed a carton of milk and spilled it right across Alara's table, the white liquid spreading like a stain of ridicule across her lunch, dripping onto her lap, soaking her jeans, while laughter grew louder and louder. And for a moment Alara felt herself shrink, her throat tightening, her eyes burning with the sting of tears that she fought to keep from falling, because she knew if she cried, if she showed even the smallest sign of weakness, it would fuel them further. So she sat frozen, her fists clenched under the table, her breathing shallow, her heart pounding so hard she thought the entire cafeteria could hear it, and all she wanted was to disappear, to vanish into thin air and never have to face them again. But deep within her, a fire she thought long extinguished flickered, small but defiant, whispering that she had endured enough, that this wasn't just about spilled milk or stolen food, it was about her dignity, her place in a world that kept trying to push her down. And though her mind screamed for her to stay silent, her body began to tremble, not from fear but from rage, a slow simmer that built with every laugh, every cruel word, every bite of her food stolen in mockery, until Jason leaned closer, his face inches from hers, his voice low enough for only her to hear. "Welcome to Ridgewood, loser. Get used to this." And then, as if to crown his cruelty, he picked up a spoonful of mashed potatoes from his friend's tray and flicked it directly onto her shirt, the warm mess sliding down her chest to the sound of roars from his friends. And that was when something inside Alara snapped, like a string pulled too tight, finally breaking, and she rose, slow at first, the legs of her chair screeching across the floor, the sudden noise silencing a portion of the room, eyes widening as the quiet, timid girl they had marked as prey stood tall, her fists no longer hidden beneath the table but visible, trembling not with weakness but with uncontained fury. And Jason, amused, raised his brows as though daring her, taunting her further. "What's wrong, new girl? Finally gonna cry?" But before another word could spill from his lips, Elora grabbed her tray, heavy with what remained of her ruined lunch, lifted it with surprising strength, and with a sharp, explosive motion, smashed it directly into Jason's chest. The impact startling him, sending food splattering across his designer shirt, dripping onto the floor. The loud crack of the tray colliding with him echoing through the cafeteria like a battle drum, and silence followed. A stunned hush as dozens of students froze in disbelief, their jaws dropping, their eyes wide, while Jason staggered back, his smirk wiped clean. His pride shattered in front of everyone, and in that frozen moment, Elora stood breathing heavily, her chest rising and falling, her glare sharp as steel. And though fear still lurked in the corners of her heart, it was now drowned by the rush of adrenaline, by the intoxicating power of refusing to be a victim. And while Jason's friends scrambled to his side, muttering in shock, Elora whispered just loud enough for him to hear, her voice steady for the first time, "Don't ever mistake kindness for weakness." And then, without waiting for anyone's reaction, she turned and walked toward the cafeteria doors, leaving behind a room buzzing with whispers, stunned stares, and the first seeds of respect, or perhaps fear, planted in the minds of everyone who had thought she would simply bow her head. And as the doors swung shut behind her, one thing became certain. Ridgewood High would never see her the same way again, because the new girl had snapped, and the war had just begun.